Hi, this is parable number 54, the parable of the wise steward, and this is one of 54 parables that are on a playlist on YouTube. The parables of Jesus made simple on my homepage under Matthew Robert Payne. If you look under my playlist, you'll be able to find this parable. You'll be able to find the 54 parables. I'm the author of 57 Christian books under the name Matthew Robert Payne on Amazon. Also the author of 850 articles that are found on eZine articles, E-Z-I-N-E, articles.com under the name Matthew Robert Payne. And I'm the creator of 2,500 YouTube videos under the name Matthew Robert Payne. And about 500 of them are personal prophecies that I've done for people. I encourage you to watch this video and comment and encourage me if you choose to. We'll just have a look at the parable. And the Lord said, "Who then is faithful and a wise steward, whom his master will make ruler over the household and give them a portion of food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom the master will find doing so when he comes. Truly, I say to you that he'll make him ruler over all that he has. But if that servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat the male and female servants, and eat and drink and be drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day he is not looking for them, at an hour when he is not aware, and cut him in two and appoint him a portion with unbelievers. And that servant who knew his master's who did not prepare himself to do according to his will be beaten with many stripes. But he who did not know, yet committed things deserving of stripes, shall be beaten with a few. For everyone whom much is given, from him much will be required. To him who much has been committed, of him they will ask the more." I want to share with you, first of all, that Jesus talks a lot, and the Bible talks a lot about reward and honor. And if you honor the Lord and you obey the Lord and you serve the Lord faithfully, you will be looked after in the next life. And God will promote you in this life and in the next life. And so, blessed is that servant whom the master will find doing so when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he'll make him ruler over all that he has. So the key to promotion in the kingdom comes from obeying God and doing what God says and doing the will of God. Of course, that includes doing the will of God, which includes obeying the parables of Jesus. Now, we covered a very similar parable. We just covered a very similar parable. So I don't want to rehearse what we said in the last parable, because it just gets boring for people and uninteresting for people. So this part that the master is delaying and beating the servants and getting drunk, and cut him into apportion him with the unbelievers. We've already covered that part and what that possibly means in the last parable, but I want to touch on this part of the parable and talk about this. And the servant who knew the master's will and did not prepare himself to do according to his will be beaten with many stripes. Now, I want to tell you, if you're listening to the parables of Jesus and you've listened to the 54 parables, or if you're reading the book that has been produced here and you're at the end of the book and you're at parable 54 now, and you're reading what I'm saying here, you've been told a number of times that you need to obey Jesus' 50 commands. You've been told time and time again in all of my 57 books that you need to obey Jesus. If you're a person who has been reading my books or been reading this book and has heard me say you need to obey the 50 commands of Jesus, and you don't obey the 50 commands of Jesus, Jesus is talking to you here. And that servant who knew his master's will, which is doing the 50 commands of Jesus, and did not prepare himself to do according to his will, did not obey those commandments, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he who did not know, yet committed things deserving of stripes, shall be beaten with a few. So that's not you. If you're at chapter 54 of this book and you've read the 53 chapters beforehand, and you're listening to this, you're reading this and the 54th parable, and you've heard multiple times me say that you need to obey the 50 commands of Jesus, and you're not, and you've chosen not to put the 50 commands on your fridge, and you've chosen not to obey them, you've chosen to ignore this. But he who does not know, yet committed things deserving of stripes shall be beaten with a few. That's not you. If you know that you should be obeying, that's not going to be you. That's only going to be happening to your friends and people that that have never heard me preach on the 50 commands of Jesus and obeying Jesus. If people know that they're meant to be obeying Jesus and they don't obey, they're going to cop a lot of stripes. And if people don't know, they're not going to. Now, is Jesus going to beat people with many stripes in heaven, in the afterlife? Or is Jesus going to beat people with a few stripes in the afterlife? Now, getting beat with many stripes is knowing that you're meant to obey Jesus and not doing it. You get many. Getting beat with a few stripes is not obeying Jesus, but not knowing that you need to obey him. And then there's another portion of Christians who know what Jesus taught and know his 50 commandments and obey them. That's the third group. So there's a group who knows what Jesus taught and obeys him. There's a group that knows what Jesus taught and refuses to obey him. There's a group that doesn't know what Jesus taught and doesn't obey him. So if you're in the group that knows what Jesus taught and obeys him, like myself, you'll be fine. If you're in a group that knows what Jesus taught and doesn't obey him, which is anyone who's read this book and refuses to obey Jesus, you're going to be beaten with many stripes. And if you don't know the teachings of Jesus and you haven't read this book, right? If that's a person that hasn't read this book, doesn't know about the 50 commands of Jesus, and they don't obey Jesus, they're going to be beaten with less stripes. This day of the Lord, as the punishment, as the chastisement of the Lord comes forth in this hour, this is where the many stripes is going to happen. If you're honestly listening to this book and that you're at this stage of this book and you refuse to get the 50 commands of Jesus and refuse to obey, you're going to really cop it. If you haven't heard of this book and haven't been warned, and in no place you've been warned, you're going to get less stripes. So that's a sobering message. I want to encourage you that Jesus loves you, and I love you, and one of the best ways to love you is to preach the hard truth. I asked God last year, is it more profitable for pastors to preach a watered down gospel, like a gospel that hasn't got teeth in it, an easy gospel? Is it more profitable? Do you make more money, God, if you preach a gospel that isn't hard? And he said, yes, you make more money. And I said, what percentage of pastors, what percentage of preachers preach an easy gospel to make more money? And God said, he's not going to answer that question. And I said, why not? You know the answer. He said, Matthew, I have a very hard time having you continue in the faith and continue to preach to my people. If I told you the percentage of pastors and preachers who are preaching error to make more money, if I told you that percentage, you'd completely give up on the church and you wouldn't preach to them again. So it's a very high portion of pastors who are evil servants. There's a very high percentage of preachers not preaching the truth. If you've been disturbed in this book, if you've been disturbed with my preaching, if you've been concerned that all I talk about is obeying Jesus, you're concerned for the wrong reasons, because I'm a good steward. I'm a wise and faithful steward, and I'm preaching a word in season, in due season. And if this book comes out by November 2020, get ready for the next 2 years after that, 2021 and 2022. See that if you read this book in the early stages of 2021, see that things don't get bad. Like I say, they're going to get bad. I pray that you're blessed, and I pray that you can uh, do well, and I hope that you can pass this book on to people that you love.